Hi guys, and welcome back to Is It Worth It Reviews. Today I'm going to review something that is going to chase away most of the normies, and that is a DDC, digital to digital converter. If you thought that all DACs, digital to analog converters, sounded the same, wait till you hear about this one. And what I have here today is a Laiv Harmony micro DDC. So I have already reviewed two Laiv products from the Harmony series. It was Harmony DAC that you can see here and Harmony Preamp/headphone amplifier, and both of these products were really highly performant, high quality made. So when Laiv asked me, would you like to review our latest DDC, I was like, sure. And this one, micro DDC, is going for $850 US. I think I saw it somewhere in Europe for 999 euros, all of the taxes included in France or something like that. So that's the pricing. And this is actually quite simple device. So in the back, you have several different digital inputs to choose from. And those are USB, iiWi over HDMI, then AES, EBU, coaxial. And the only thing I can notice is missing is actually optical Toslink input. There is also 10 MHz clock, so you can use external clock if you wish to do so. I'm just not there yet. And one digital output, which is iiWi over HDMI port. So you bring any of these digital inputs and DDC will clean that signal from jitter, reclock it, galvanically isolate it and send it through this iiWi digital output to your DAC. In front, we have one power button and then several buttons for input selection. There is no remote control, so you have to do it physically like this. The whole unit, as you can see, is in this small brick kind of form factor that is quite weighty for its small size because it is machined a piece of aluminum like all Laiv devices so far. And you can see on the back that you can power it using 5 volts DC, either by using this traditional barrel jack or USB-C port. Both of these can be used. That's a convenient move. So in the box from the factory, this DDC comes with a small wall wart, small switching power supply. So if you wish to do so, you can change it or try to upgrade it, but I'll talk about that and its impact on the performance a bit later in the video. And I really don't want to repeat all of the promo material like femtoclocks, FIFO buffers and things like that, and how awesome internal logic is, because if it really is that awesome, I will hear that. So let's move to the real life tests immediately. The way I started testing micro DDC is that I used my digital streamer, Volumio Revo Plus, which is a great streamer, and then I connected it digitally to this micro DDC. And I used several different connections for testing purposes, including USB, iiWi, coaxial, etc. And then, of course, there is only one iiWi HDMI output on micro DDC that connects to Laiv Harmony DAC. And when I started listening to my music with micro DDC in the chain, what I noticed at first was slightly cleaner sound, and maybe also slightly leaner too when it comes to tonality, but then I kept listening to the music and I started noticing more differences. Background became darker. It felt like there's lower noise floor or something like that, but there's more vacuum-like darkness behind the soundstage. And also it feels like some sort of slight dust effect from the air is removed. Like somebody just took a vacuum cleaner and vacuumed all the dust from the background and from the space around the instruments. And because of that, there is a feeling that there's just more emptiness between tones and greater darkness behind them. And tones themselves are flushed out a bit better. They stand with greater contrast to that dark background and to each other They're separated more firmly with better focus and even feel slightly more palpable and slightly more three-dimensional. And the soundstage itself grew a bit. It feels slightly deeper and wider, just a touch more spacious and cleaner, like you're looking to your music through a freshly cleaned window glass. And you probably know that feeling, that even when you think your windows are clean and you can see perfectly, then somebody comes along and cleans them. Of course, it's not you. And then you realize, wow, this is what squeaky clean and contrasty everything appears to be when windows are clean. And it's a similar effect with micro DDC. So after a few hours of actually listening to my music with it, I got used to this newfound cleanliness and clarity, and I removed micro DDC from the chain. I started listening to Harmony DAC on its own, again connected to Volumio Riva Plus. Harmony DAC performs just fantastic on its own. Nothing really seismic and huge is happening when you remove DDC, but nature can be cruel that way, that once you get used to finer stuff, you notice something that was perfectly fine before, you not notice more of its slight shortcomings. So once when I removed uDDC from the chain, I realized that a bit of grit returned to all tones, a bit of that sensation of not super vacuumy clean space, but there's just some sort of dust in between notes, and the notes themselves feel just slightly flatter and less three-dimensional. And the whole soundstage, by the way, feels slightly less deep, but as I said, once you get used to finer stuff, you notice it. And it was actually much easier to notice the difference coming from using micro DDC to not using it than it was going from not using it to putting it into the system. I think that there's just something in our brains that works that way and notices things more easily that way. Next thing that some of you asked me in the comments of my other reviews is if I use Laiv Harmony DAC and Laiv Harmony Micro DDC, does that lift the performance of Harmony DAC to the level of Denafrips Venus 15th that I reviewed recently, and I told you that I preferred it slightly to the Harmony DAC because it sounded a bit cleaner, a bit more spacious, a bit smoother and more liquid-like, and in the process just a touch more resolving, especially in the highest registers. And the short answer is yes. Once you connect micro DDC, and it does what I already explained it's doing to the sound. It cleans it out a bit. It makes the background appear a bit darker and tones more contrasty, more flushed out, and slightly more three-dimensional and slightly more palpable. And also, maybe I didn't even mention that when I described the differences, highest frequencies feel smoother and cleaner in a way that they appear to have less grainy tone to them. Coherence of tones is better. Tone decay in time is observed with more ease, and all of those spatial cue reverbs, tone trails that were also there when you listened to Harmony alone are now just cleaner and more easily heard, more easily pinpointed around and behind leading tones in that very clean, very dark, very grain and dust-free soundstage. And this lift in performance is what does bring Harmony DAC to the same level as Venus 15th. Of course, they still have different sound character, where Denafrips goes for that bolder, more bassy, just slightly bigger sound, but Harmony Live goes for a bit more mid-range forward, closer to you, and a bit snappier but slightly leaner sound, directly compared to Denafrips. It's not lean at all on its own. It's just that Denafrips is one of the most massive sounding DACs, and I'm talking comparing these two. But those small tonal differences and preferences aside, yes, I do think that Harmony DAC with microDDC performs at the same level with Denafrips Venus 15th, which is, in my experience and from everything that I've personally tested ever in my own setup and on this channel, that's the S tier of sound. If there is higher tier than that, I don't know it, to be perfectly honest with you. Now, the next important thing, if you are thinking about how this DDC performs with other brand DACs, is it some sort of synergy and something that works especially well with Harmony DAC? I would say no, it's not. And I tried it with few DACs, including Denafrips Venus 15th that we were just mentioning, and it always brings improvement in perceived clarity and in perceived soundstage size and precision of pinpointing and slightly better tone trailing, tone decay in time. So I did not notice that there is something that works specifically well when you pair this DDC with this DAC alone. And if you do have some other brand DAC like Denafrips, Holo Audio, etc., you can expect the same level of improvement as I was describing for Harmony DAC. Oh, and I almost forgot to mention this, power supply. So because it's powered by external 5 volts power supply and it's a small switching power supply that's provided, we can try and upgrade it. And I had few not so expensive, quite affordable linear power supplies lying around. One of them is from AliExpress. It's a really decent one for 100 and something US dollars. The other one is Alo Shanti that is slightly tuned and pimped by yours truly. With both of these, microDDC sounded just slightly leaner, maybe even a bit more cleaner, but in an analytical way that I didn't particularly like. Some liveliness and some of the soundstage richness was reduced actually. And I started thinking that this is one of those digital devices that actually does prefer switching power supply. And I did not test this because I didn't have anything with me, but my belief at the moment is that if you want to try and upgrade this factory supplied power supply, the good way to go about it would be having an even better switching power supply. In a nutshell, you basically don't even need to try because the provided one works great with this uDDC. And this basically leads me to conclusion. Harmony microDDC is a thing that is not in any way essential for your hi-fi setup. It's a thing of passion. It's a thing of having something great, then wanting for it to be even greater. And it's a vanity project. It's a passion project. It's a project for crazy people. Call it however you want, but it's something that you do out of love, passion, and because you're in a great position in your life to be able to do something like that. Then once you hear what microDDC is doing when connected in between your source and between your DAC, I think it's going to be really, really hard not to keep it in your system. I'm not sure, I did not look at the website. Is Laiv actually doing that 30-day guarantee return policy or something like that? But I'm quite sure that it would go well with something like microDDC, because if I had only quick A/B test at some sort of retail store or somebody brought it to me and we did few quick A/Bs, I would probably conclude, yeah, it does sound cleaner, but I'm not completely convinced that I would give this much cash for a DDC. But on the other hand, after having it just for a few hours in my own system, listening on my own without any critical listening or anything, just enjoying music, and then several hours later coming back to the chain without it, I was like, oh my, I want this. If you would ask, but how much it improves the sound, that's really, really difficult to say. Some people will hype it. They'll say like, oh, you have so much cleaner background, you have so much more three-dimensional sound stage, it's lifting my whole sound 2 tiers above the previous one. That's overhyping it. I've seen both reviewers and users doing that for a new piece of gear that they fall in love with. It's overhyping it. But if you already have a great system and you think about DDC, and if it adds 5% of the sound, even 3% more to an already great sounding setup, that's something that is actually worthy to these crazy audiophiles, and I am one of them. I keep repeating that. I wouldn't start this channel if I am not one of them. It's a good thing that I don't have too much money, because I would spend all of it on this hobby. To cut it short, this is one of these things that it's not really necessary. It's not essential for your system or your life in general. But if you hear it, you're probably going to notice improvements. You're probably going to miss them once it's gone, and you're going to want it. Just like I want it. There you go. I hope you liked the video. See you next time. Bye.